Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm creating a CCNA training series and I want to take a step back from the technical side of things to discuss how you can prepare for the exam. In this video, I'm going to review the structure of the exam, provide some resources to help you prepare for the exam, and give you some advice that I found helpful when sitting for exams like the CCNA. The CCNA tests your knowledge and skills in network fundamentals, IP connectivity, security, and automation. Each area is assigned a value that represents a percentage of questions that you can expect to see. You have 2 hours to complete the test, and you'll receive questions in a variety of formats. The first format is multiple choice single answer. Most people should be familiar with this. It's when you're presented with a question and you need to pick the correct answer. For multiple choice multiple answer, you're presented with a question, however, there may be more than one correct answer. For this one, you select all answers you believe to be correct. Drag and drop questions have a set of 2 or more possible answers that you drag into response targets, which are typically a block or a table that's on the screen. A new performance-based lab was introduced in the 200-301 exam. It's designed to measure your knowledge in a hands-on configuration and troubleshooting environment. The lab interface splits into 2 main panels. The left panel has 3 tabs for navigation between tasks, guidelines, and topology. The task tab is where you'll find instructions and requirements for each step. The Guidelines tab will tell you what you should not be touching, and the Topology tab will illustrate a network diagram for the tasks. The interface allows you to navigate between terminals using keyboard shortcuts, and you can manually reorder the terminal tabs if needed. The lab does not allow you to split the right panel to see 2 or more terminals at the same time. You can click on the device icon on the left Topology panel to activate the corresponding terminal on the right. The topology diagram is interactive and supports zooming in and out, and there's a send-all feature that allows you to send commands to all devices at once. Now that we've covered the exam format, let's discuss some of the resources that you can use while studying for the exam. It's important to note that everybody learns differently. I'll highlight the benefits of each option the best that I can, but ultimately you need to decide which resources work best for your style of learning. If I mention a specific resource as a recommendation, it's because I've used it personally and I found it to be helpful on my journey. Books are one of the most common ways to prepare for an exam. One of the most popular is the official cert guide from Cisco Press. I recommend picking up their premium edition ebook as it contains practice tests, hands-on labs, and training videos. Speaking of videos, they're an excellent resource if you prefer to see visual illustrations or outputs while learning. You also have the flexibility to just ignore the video and listen to the subject without watching, and that can be helpful if you're multitasking or you prefer to take a passive learning approach. I hope that you'll check out my videos, but I need to give credit where credit is due, and to those who helped me along the way. I found videos from popular YouTube creators such as David Bombal, Network Chuck, Jeremy Chara, and Keith Barker to be very helpful. If you're looking for a complete paid course, take a look at Udemy or Coursera for available options, or online IT training providers such as INE and CBT Nuggets. Flashcards are a powerful way to quiz yourself on the new things that you're learning. You can find them online, but I recommend taking the time to make them yourself. You can create flashcards as you progress through your journey and use them to test your knowledge of current and past topics. Flashcards can be physical or digital, but I suggest using digital ones. They're just more practical and convenient. Forums are a great place to meet and connect with others. You can often find people that are going through the same journey as you, but even if that's not the case, there's usually somebody that can offer advice or feedback. I recommend using this resource to find others to bounce ideas off of and to form study groups, and that'll help keep you accountable as you work towards your goal. Books, videos, flashcards, they're all great, but at some point you need to get hands-on and start configuring some equipment. Packet Tracer is a network simulation tool designed by Cisco that allows you to create simulated computer networks. You can use this software free from Cisco to configure routers and switches without purchasing any physical hardware. You can even save the work and share it with others, which is a great way to lab troubleshooting scenarios. I recommend using Packet Tracer for the CCNA because it's the best way to hit the ground running. It's important to note that Packet Tracer is only suitable for CCNA level training. Because the software produces a simulated environment, it can only mimic the behavior of real networking devices. If you decide to go past the CCNA, you'll want to look into physical or emulated equipment. There are 2 ways that you can leverage physical equipment for your training. The first of which is rack rentals. With rack rentals, you can purchase credits from a company that hosts the physical equipment on your behalf. You can then redeem those credits for rack time, where you'll have dedicated access to the equipment for your training. If you're ambitious, you could purchase used equipment online, but you need to consider that networking devices require power and cooling. Besides the initial investments to acquire the physical equipment and the associated cabling, you need to find a place to store it that has the proper amounts of power and cooling that you need to run the devices. Another consideration is how you're going to manage the devices. Network devices, at least initially, are configured by connecting your computer to a console port on the back of the device. If you decide to get physical equipment, I recommend designing it in a way where it's attached to your home network so you can manage each device remotely through a secure protocol such as SSH. This approach is more manageable as you'll only need to physically connect to the device if you lose management access. Network emulators are a way that you can run actual Cisco software in a virtualized environment. This is a more realistic experience than a simulated environment, such as Packet Tracer, because you're running the actual router or switch software that a physical device uses. While you don't need to purchase any real network hardware for this option, you will need a computer with a lot of memory and CPU to run the virtualized networking devices. Depending upon the size of the networks you want to run, you may need to purchase a dedicated computer or even a server. Popular emulation software providers are EvenG and GNS3. Unfortunately, these emulators don't come with any of the images that you need to create a lab. You need to provide that yourself. If you do not have access to Cisco images, consider looking at Cisco modeling labs, as it includes the images that you need to start building your lab. At some point, you'll need to gauge if you're ready to sit for the exam. If you picked up the ebook that I recommended, you already have some practice tests, but what if you need more? Mosen is a well-respected network simulation and practice test provider, and they even offer a money-back guarantee if you don't pass your exam. I know it sounds too good to be true, so I left a link in the description if you want to check it out. So you have all these resources and you want to get started, but where do you start? What I found helpful was to look at the exam blueprint and identify the areas where I would receive the most questions. That's not to say that the other topics aren't important or to ignore them. I just found it useful to put more of my focus on the majority of topics that I was likely to receive questions on. Once I had that weighted list of topics, I read carefully through the blueprint and I looked for verbs that hint at what I should be able to do. Words such as describe, configure, verify, and troubleshoot represent the actions that you should be proficient in for a given topic. I then used this information to form a plan of attack. For topics that were listed as describe, I quizzed myself using flashcards, as those topics only require a surface level theory of understanding. For topics of configure, verify, and troubleshoot, I made sure to lab those repeatedly. This is where finding somebody to lab with is really helpful. You can go back and forth trading broken Packet Tracer labs as a way to test yourself. If you can't find somebody to work with, and you picked up the ebook that I recommended, you should have some labs in there that you can use. Once you figure out your plan of attack, make a schedule and stick to it. Setting aside some time each week to work towards your goal will ensure that you're continually building upon your knowledge and making progress. When it comes to your lab, add components in layers. People often try to build an extensive network from the start, and then they get frustrated when things aren't working as expected. Start small, build your lab in layers, and work towards a complete picture. In terms of memorization, there are some things that you should know sufficiently enough that you can recall them from memory quite quickly. Some examples of this are TCP and UDP port numbers, IP protocol numbers, multicast addresses, OSI layers, and timers for protocols such as spanning tree and OSPF. On the day of the exam, make sure to arrive early. Every Cisco exam that I've taken required that I secure my belongings in a locker, show my identification, and take a picture. And this is before even entering the testing area. When you arrive at the testing center, you should receive a dry erase board and a marker that can be used during the exam. Once you're at your seat, now's a good time to write down on the dry erase board all the things that you may forget or you feel that may be helpful to you during the exam. This could be things like port numbers, timers, or conversion charts. While taking the test, remember that once you select and submit an answer, you can't go back, so be sure that you're ready before moving on to the next question. It's okay if you see a question for something that's not on the blueprint. That can sometimes happen as Cisco only lists some of the topics that can show up on the test. If you run into this, answer to the best of your ability and keep going. The last and potentially most important thing that I can tell you is don't be afraid to fail. These tests are challenging, and it's not uncommon to fail on the first attempt. I know many people, including myself, that failed on the first attempt before passing on a subsequent attempt. There are some things that help me and hopefully will help you too if you find yourself in that situation. First, take detailed notes immediately after leaving the testing center. When I found out that I didn't pass, I immediately went to my car and I took notes about my experience. I outlined in detail all the topics that I felt like I didn't do well on or I struggled to remember the details for. I also documented the subjects that I could have done better on. It's essential to do this as soon as possible while the exam is still fresh in your mind. Second, use the test results to identify your areas of improvement. When you finish the exam, you'll receive a readout that gives you the percentage of questions that you answer correctly for each section of the blueprint. Use that readout along with the notes that you took after the test as feedback to determine where you're weak and identify your areas of improvement. And then lastly, retake the test as soon as you're ready. If you need to, use a day or two to take a mental health break. Getting back into the testing center is only going to help if you're in the right mindset and prepared to execute. Use the week or two immediately following the failure to focus on your areas of improvement. You can take more time if needed, but it's best to return as soon as possible while the last exam is still fresh in your mind. Keep going. Now is the time to attack your weakest areas and to make them strong. And once you think you're ready, retake the test as soon as possible. If you have any questions about what was covered, please leave a comment below. If you enjoy these tutorials and want to support my work, please like this video and share it with others. If you have the means, you can contribute to my Patreon or leave a tip in my tip jar. Be sure to subscribe to stay updated to my latest content, and thank you all for watching.